Right, so I've been away for the past few days and haven't really been keeping up to date as to what is happening on social media, so when I sat down today to look at what topic I should talk about today, this was by far the biggest topic that just kept continuously popping up on my For You page. And even though it involves a TikToker, and we'll get into a lot more details in just a second, from the best of my knowledge, this is also like mainstream news over in Australia. I mean, I looked at a few of the YouTube channels for a bunch of like big news stations in Australia, and the vast majority of them have covered this multiple times over. So it's a pretty big situation, is what I'm trying to say. Now, let's actually add some context to this situation. So there's a few people you need to be aware of. The first person being Brookie, this TikTok account right here. Brooki Bake House, 2 million followers. If we take a look down her page, you can see she posts a lot of baking content and is clearly very successful. I mean, the vast majority of these videos have at least 1 million views, some of which have way more. I mean, this one right here's got 12 million views. On her pinned videos, you can see some bigger ones. I mean, 23.5 million views, 21.2, 15.1, clearly has had a lot of success. So people clearly love Brookie's baking videos, and because of that, Brookie actually released a baking book with a bunch of recipes in it. Here's a video from October of last year of Brookie announcing this book.
Everyone has been asking me for my cookie recipes since my bakery went viral. Good news is you can finally get your hands on all of my recipes, 100 iconic recipes from Brooki Bake House. Bake with Brookie is officially in stores October 29 in Australia and then launching all over the rest of the world throughout the year.
And this book in particular is kind of the main reason why this situation has happened, and that's going to make a lot more sense in just a second. Now, another person you'd be aware of is Nagi, and this is a TikTok account right here. It's recipe_tin, 1.6 million followers. If we take a look down her page, we can see she also makes a bunch of, well, cooking and baking videos. Now, 5 days ago as I'm recording this video, Nagi actually made a post basically calling out Brookie. We can see right here, it says, when you see your recipes in a $4 million book, I have made allegations against Penguin Australia that the bestseller, Bake with Brookie by Brooke Bellamy, contains plagiarised recipes, including 2 of mine, Caramel Slice and Baklava, as well as recipes by other authors. And this post is kind of like a slideshow, kind of showing the plagiarised or the alleged plagiarised work here. And also, as you mentioned here, there's other authors who feel like their work has also been plagiarised. Now, we're going to look at Nagi's claims in a lot more detail in just a second, but one other author who has also called out Brooke recently is Sally's Bake Blog. And now this is a story she actually posted on Instagram that says, Nagi, you know how much I admire and support you, and I'm so grateful you let me know months ago that one of my recipes, the best vanilla cake I've ever had, published by me in 2019, was also plagiarised in this book and also appears on the author's YouTube channel. Original recipe creators who put in the work to develop and test recipes deserve credit, especially in a best-selling cookbook. Now, the reason I'm showing this one quickly is because it is a lot quicker. We can get through this one very quickly, whereas Nagi has posted a lot of claims that we're going to look through. But just to show you what Sally is referencing here, this is the best vanilla cake by Sally, and this is Brookie's video, the best fluffy vanilla cake recipe. And if you look on the ingredients list here, they are very, very similar. And in fact, so similar that on this one by Sally, it says 1 tablespoon pure vanilla extract, in brackets, yes, a tablespoon. And then we look at Brookie's description, it says 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract, in brackets, yes, a tablespoon. And that basically sums up a lot of the claims. The claims are that these recipes have been plagiarized. Now, legally, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, because obviously with recipes for certain things, like, they are going to be very similar. Like, if you're making a chocolate cake, the recipes are going to be similar depending on where you look. And we actually are going to see a lawyer's perspective on this a little bit later to give a bit of insight on how this will work legally. But first of all, let's actually get to Nagi's claims, and she goes into a lot more detail on her RecipeTin Eats website. To me, the similarities between the recipes in question are far too specific and detailed to be dismissed as coincidence. Penguin has denied the allegations. I have received no response from Brooke Bellamy, the author. I'm speaking up because staying silent protects this kind of behaviour. Profiting from plagiarised recipes is unethical, even if it's not copyright infringement, and undermines the integrity of the entire book. And it's a slap in the face to every author who puts in their hard work to create original content rather than cutting corners. And in fact, there's a section here that says it all began with a reader email, and says, in November 2024, a reader emailed me to say she noticed remarkable similarities between my caramel slice recipe and the version in the newly released Bake with Brookie, a cookbook by Brooke Bellamy, an Australian social media influencer with almost 4 million followers who has a cookie shop in Queensland. This email went on to say that even to my novice eye, I noticed that her recipes seemed to replicate Nagi's almost exactly, albeit a few changes in wording. Now, this section actually goes on to claim how many copies of this book have been sold, Brookie's baking book, and it says, it has sold over $4.6 million worth of sales in under 6 months, 92,949 copies sold as of 23rd of April 2025, according to Nielsen Book Scan, the regular retail price being $49.99. So yeah, like I said before, Brookie is clearly very, very, very successful. I mean, $4.6 million worth of books sold. Now, I'm sure you want to see the actual recipe side by side, and that's what we're getting to here. So it says, while recipes can and resemble one another because there are only so many ways some recipes can be made. The precision and detail in the similarities in this case are, in my opinion, far too strong to be coincidence. So on the left we see Nagi's recipe, and on the right we see Brookie's recipe, and if we go through the ingredients here, I mean, yeah, they do look very, very similar. I mean, the measurements are exactly the same, and then there's like certain words that differ when describing like the type of ingredient. Like, for example, 80 grams of brown sugar compared to 80 grams of light brown sugar. And again, like I said before, I'd be very curious to see how this works legally, because as we just read, there's only so many ways you can make certain things, right? There's only so many ways you can make a caramel slice. But with the recipes being pretty identical, it would be interesting to see how that would play out in court. Now here we actually get to see a side-by-side comparison of the instructions, right? So on the left, again, we have Nagi's instructions. On the right, we have Bake with Brookie. Now you can pause to read these if you want to look through it very specifically. I will say they are pretty much the same. Like, there's obviously different words that are different, but the actual instructions themselves are the same for pretty much everything here. Again, the only difference I can see is that, like, there's different words used for certain bits, right? Like, if we'll give a comparison here. So in Nagi's book, it says, place butter, sugar, and vanilla in a saucepan over medium-low heat. When the butter is melted, whisk to combine with sugar, then just leave it until it comes to a simmer. Whereas in Brookie's book, it says, place the butter, sugar, and vanilla in a saucepan over medium heat, stir continuously until the mixture starts to simmer. So the wording is different, but the instructions are very similar. Nagi goes on to say that my caramel slice recipe is special because it is made using caramel as the base. I mean the name, rather than golden syrup, which is the typical recipe. Gives it a metallic flavour, I swear. I can tell you the exact moment in my life that triggered the creation of this recipe, and how and why it became to be, and what I tried before deciding that I had figured out the one. So basically, Nagi is saying, like, this is a unique recipe in terms of, like, caramel slices. Now, Nagi also claimed that her recipe for baklava was also plagiarised, and we can see a side-by-side again here, again with the left being Nagi's recipe, the right being Brookie's. Again, here we can see that the measurements are exactly the same. On this top part, we can see that the unsalted butter and cinnamon powder are like the other way around on like Nagi's compared to Brookie's. But the ingredients are still the same, and then there's some differences in words. Like on Nagi's, we say 170 grams of honey, whereas on Brookie's, it's 170 grams of pure honey. Again, with the instructions, we can see that they're very similar. For example, Nagi says bake for 1 hour to 1 hour 15 minutes until golden brown. Meanwhile, make syrup. On Brookie's, it says bake in the oven for 1 hour until golden brown. Meanwhile, make the syrup. There's also a section here for lawyers and letters, and it says, I wrote a Penguin immediately, with my first letter sent on the 4th of December 2024. Disappointingly, instead of engaging in civil discussions with me, Penguin brought in lawyers and resorted to what felt to me legal intimidation. Letters in stern, aggressive tones packed with pages of legal jargon that I struggled to make sense of. I engaged my own lawyers to represent me, Simpsons, a law firm specialising in intellectual property, to help me understand my rights, assets, my legal position, and handle correspondence from Penguin's lawyers. Scrolling further down is a section called What I Asked For, Accountability, that says, I asked Penguin to withdraw the book containing the plagiarized recipes from the sale, either attribute or remove my recipes from future reprints of the book, and to make a substantial donation to a charity in lieu of financial compensation. Not for RecipeTin meals, I don't want their money. I did not even ask for a reimbursement of legal fees I've incurred, which has now run into the tens of thousands. I also personally wrote a letter to Penguin's directors and sent 2 letters to Brooke Bellamy. I didn't receive a response to any of them. And we also see a copy of this letter here if you want to pause to read it, but it's basically Nagi writing out to Brooke and saying, like, there is some plagiarized work here. I would assume by now that you've also investigated the recipes and ran it through some, like, plagiarizing software, and it would have given you a red flag. But it looks like Penguin have declined these claims. Now, we do actually have a response from Brooke herself in just a second, but in this section here, it says, allegations denied, what happens now? And it says, Penguin have denied my allegations, stating in a letter from their lawyers that our client respectfully rejects your client's allegations and confirms that the recipes in the BWB book were written by Brooke Bellamy. I seized further correspondence with Penguin via their lawyers last month, as there was no point continuing. They would not admit wrongdoing and would not agree to take the steps to remedy the situation to my satisfaction. How I wish I could tell you what they offered to do, but I can't. So obviously there was an offer made here from Penguin. From what we're seeing here, apparently, according to Nagi, it seems like it was maybe a very disrespectful offer and wouldn't make up for the plagiarism if them claims are true. Now, interestingly, we can actually see here that in recent weeks, I understand that a new edition of the book has been quietly released into market, which has a different caramel slice recipe, typical golden syrup version. Eventually, this will replace stock in all retailers, though I'm sure the original version remains. So there is a new version of the book that has took this recipe away. So if they are denying the allegations, but then have also changed the recipe so it's no longer very similar, that seems to me like the kind of admitting that it might have been plagiarized. Obviously, they might just not want the bother and the backlash that this will cause. Yeah, it kind of does seem like they are admitting it a bit. Now, like I mentioned before, Brookie has actually responded to this, and it's on 2 Instagram stories, and it says, in light of the recent allegations made against me for RecipeTin Eats for plagiarizing 2 of her recipes in my cookbook, Bake with Brookie, Caramel Slice and Baklava, I would like to provide the below statement. I did not plagiarize any recipes in my book, which consists of 100 recipes I've created over many years, since falling in love with baking as a child and growing up baking with my mum in our home kitchen. In 2016, I opened my first bakery. I've been creating my recipes and selling them commercially since October 2016, as shown on the next slide and as was communicated at the first point of contact I received. So yeah, basically Brookie is saying that this recipe is something that she came up with way before Nagi published this book. Now, I don't know if that's entirely true, right? But a lot of people have been trying to dig into this on Reddit. This is on the pop culture chat subreddit. As we can see here, it says, someone in another thread found a picture of the caramel slices she made in 2016 in another bakery, and they look noticeably different from the one she published in the book, so the fact that she made some kind of caramel slice since 2016 is not a good explanation at all. And we can see a screenshot here of these alleged caramel slices that Brookie came up with before Nagi, and clearly people believe that these are different to the ones in the book. So, I mean, you can see the screenshot right here, and we can also compare it to this screenshot off the book, which is at a different angle, so it's a bit harder to tell, but yeah, you can make your own mind up on that if you think they are different. On March 2020, RecipeTin Eats published a recipe for caramel slice. It uses the same ingredients as my recipe, which I have been making and selling since 4 years prior. I immediately offered to remove both recipes from future reprints to prevent further aggravation, which was communicated to Nagi swiftly through discussions. I have great respect for Nagi and what she has done in recent years for cooks, content creators, and cookbooks in Australia, especially as a fellow female entrepreneur. Recipe development in today's world is evolved in inspiration from other cooks, cookbook authors, food bloggers, and content creators. This willingness to share recipes and build on what has come before is what I love so much about baking and sharing recipes, the community that surrounds it. I stand by my love for baking, my recipes, and the joy this book has brought so many home bakers around the world, eager to try recreating my recipes from inside their homes. Now, over on the ABC News Australia YouTube channel, they have been talking about this actually quite a bit, and they have brought in a copyright expert professor called Isabella Alexander from the UTS Faculty of Law, and she has given her opinions on what could potentially happen here and if this is copyright infringement.
Well, interestingly, you can copyright a recipe. You can't copyright the idea or the dish, so you can't copyright chocolate cake or caramel slice or baklava. What the copyright protects, though, is the particular form of the recipe. So, again, not just the ingredients. If you need to make a chocolate cake, you're going to have to use...
So I've just realised I think I was pronouncing baklava, like, wrong. Was I saying, like, baklava or something like that? If I was saying that wrong, I can guarantee there's a lot of comments already written on this video about that. I'm sorry, okay?
A chocolate cake, you're going to have to use flour and eggs and cocoa. But how has the recipe book writer or the chef expressed that recipe? So what ingredients, what order have they put the ingredients in? What quantities have they used? And then most importantly, the instructions. So how have they written out the instructions for the actual baking, because that's where a recipe book author and a chef can show their own individuality and originality and make their real contribution to that dish.
Okay, so basically you can't copyright a chocolate cake, for example, but the ingredients used and the measurements and the instructions can be. Now, as we saw earlier, they are very, very similar with some differences in like the words being used, but in terms of like the measurements and everything, they did look very similar, almost identical in fact. So if this did go to court, I would assume that Brookie would either have to prove that she came up with this beforehand, or prove that this is a coincidence and it wasn't copied. Now, I obviously don't know how that would go. I'm not sure how it would really play out, but what we're hearing here is that you can copyright the ingredients used and the measurements and the specific instructions. But Isabel does go on to say that it is hard to prove even for Nagi, right? Because a lot of these things, like a chocolate cake, caramel slices, whatever it is, do use similar ingredients.
Format, and that's where the line is drawn. And it is hard to prove because, as I said, you have to, in order to make a chocolate cake, you have to use the same kind of ingredients, so they can be difficult to prove as well.
Now, after this news was broke, there has been a lot of backlash, a lot of comments on Brookie's videos are all kind of talking about this. Also, articles have been posted like this one. This is from ABC News. It says, Brooke Bellamy dropped as Girls Entrepreneur Program Ambassador after RecipeTin Eats plagiarism allegations. The Bake with Brookie author was lined up as an ambassador for the Academy of Enterprising Girls, which runs design and career workshops and online classes for girls to develop the skills to start their own business. business, so apparently she's been dropped from this program. Now, I don't know if we're going to get like a further response from Brookie. I would imagine maybe so, like especially with how big this situation has got with national news. So maybe there will be some further updates a little bit further on. Who knows if it's actually going to go further legally as well. I guess we're just going to have to see how this plays out, but I would love to know your opinions in the comment section down below on, I think mainly, if you think that this has actually been plagiarized. That's obviously the biggest question here, and if you do think it's been plagiarized, how do you think it should have been dealt with? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you did enjoy this video, please do leave a like on it, subscribe if you are new. Also, if you're interested in some other content, me and Emily have a channel where we play games, react to reality shows. We're about to release the finale of a murder mystery show that we've been watching, so if you're interested in that, that will be linked in the description. And until the next one, I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright, goodbye.